Welcome to TYT's final episode. in the year 2025 because it's New Year's Eve. We're going to party tonight. Actually, I'm not going to party tonight at all, but I hope you are. And we're going to be ringing in the new year. So congratulations, everyone. We survived 2025. I'm hoping 2026 will be somehow better than 2025. But I am now nearly 40 years old, so I'm smart enough to know that's unlikely to be the case. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, I just want to thank everyone for an incredible year. We had our ups and downs, of course, with what's been transpiring in the news, and that will continue. I mean, that's the news business, that's the world of politics, and there's a lot to get to today, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot to get to in the future. But I'm really looking forward to the show today. We're going to talk about the latest updates in the Minnesota fraud scandal, what's true, what isn't true. There are a lot of updates on that story. I can't wait to get to. We're also going to check in with Benjamin Netanyahu's thoughts on the Israeli settlers who have been raining terror on Palestinians in the West Bank. Did he minimize it with his conversation with Boebert? Well, you're going to find out later in this hour of the show. And then in the second hour, Cenk Uygur will be joining us to talk about how Republican voters are feeling about the economy, who they're blaming for poor economic conditions. And one of my favorite stories, the infighting within the conservative influencer space. What are they saying? It looks like Alex Jones is very upset that someone might be one-upping him in the conspiracy game. So we're going to get to that in the second hour as well. But as always, just want to encourage you to like and share the stream if you're watching us live. You can also support TYT by becoming a paying member, tyt.com/join to become one. Help keep us independent and open-minded and able to say exactly what we think about what's happening in the news every single day. With that in mind, let's get to our first story. The Department of Health and Human Services has decided to effectively punish all childcare centers in the state of Minnesota by halting federal childcare payments toward the state. And of course, this is over allegations that some of these childcare centers are engaging in fraud. Now, Deputy HHS Secretary Jim O'Neill said in a post on X that funds will be released only when states prove they are being spent legitimately. So it's good to know that the federal government wants oversight of money that's being spent. They wouldn't want the money to be defrauded or fraudulent programs to effectively steal the money, just like, through the tens of billions of dollars we allocate to foreign wars. We wouldn't want our weapons to be used for war crimes or atrocities, right? But anyway, at least in one area, it looks like the federal government is at least pretending like they're interested in more oversight. And in fact, he also posted a video indicating that certain requirements would need to be met before federal grants are approved for childcare programs in all states, not just Minnesota. With that in mind, let's take a look at what he had to say.
I have activated our Defend the Spend system for all ACF childcare payments across America. Starting today, we require a justification, receipt, or photo evidence before we make a payment. Second, I have just signed and sent a demand letter to Governor Walz. I required a full 360 review of these centers. This includes attendance records, licenses, complaints, investigations, and inspections.
And third, we've launched a dedicated fraud reporting hotline and email address at childcare.gov. Whether you're a parent, a provider, a member of the public, we want to hear from you.
It's unclear what he means by the photo evidence. Like what is that going to prove? He says upon receipt of payment. What do you want a photo of? Do you want photos of children at the daycare centers? I don't know. There was a lack of clarity there. I personally don't have any problem whatsoever with increased oversight of how public money is being spent, because it is true that fraud is a problem, not just in Minnesota, but fraud has been a huge problem in many states, as I've mentioned, California being one of them, because there was this massive infusion of COVID era money from the federal government to the states in order to keep people whole as, shutdowns were taking place and people were losing their jobs. That's always going to, unfortunately, be taken advantage of by fraudsters. So I don't have a problem with a little oversight. What I do have a problem with, though, is this idea that you do like blanket statements about an entire community, or more importantly, you punish everyone based on, some of these, businesses essentially defrauding taxpayers. And the other thing that's really interesting is there actually has been considerable oversight of these facilities by the state of Minnesota. And it's actually posted on a state website where you can look at the exact dates these facilities were visited, right? These are unannounced visits. And you can see exactly what type of violations these facilities have actually committed. Now, while the state is arguing that there was no evidence of fraud, I'm going to show you examples of multiple inspections indicating that these facilities, at least one in particular that we're going to focus on, were not providing safe conditions for children, yet they were still receiving money from the state anyway. So to me, it doesn't matter if we're talking about fraud or if we're talking about terrible conditions at these facilities. Both are very bad. And the fact that there was oversight and all they dealt with were fines here and there, a write-up here and there, and they were still receiving money from the state, I think that's a problem, as well as, the instances that have been proven to be fraud. And of course, the story is coming up after a video went viral featuring an independent YouTube journalist / influencer by the name of Nick Shirley. And so all of the various places that he visited, they need to be investigated before we automatically assume that they're engaging in fraud. And there have been some updates and some follow-ups on some of the facilities, which we'll get to in just a minute as well. All right, so in response to the federal government's freeze on all childcare funding for the state of Minnesota, Governor Tim Walz argued that this is Trump's long game. We've spent years cracking down on fraudsters. It's a serious issue, but this has been his plan all along. He's politicizing the issue to defund programs that help Minnesotans. Now, it is true that fraud has been investigated in the state of Minnesota, and there have even been dozens of convictions as a result of, these businesses defrauding taxpayers. The argument here is that there are additional businesses continuing to do fraud, and that the state isn't doing its due diligence in, essentially carrying out oversight to prevent it from happening. The Department of Homeland Security, by the way, has also been dispatched to Minneapolis, which seems a little excessive since we're dealing with questions of fraud. We're not really dealing with questions of Homeland Security. But nonetheless, the move does follow that conservative YouTube influencer's video, and Tiki Brown, who's the commissioner of the State Department of Children, Youth, and Families, pushed back on the claims made in the video, arguing that it was shot during times when the businesses were scheduled to open, meaning the businesses weren't even open yet when he showed up. Shirley, though, pushes back on that, saying that he visited the businesses around 11 a.m. to noon. And Brown also states that each of the facilities mentioned in the video has been visited at least once in the last 6 months as part of our typical licensing process. And in fact, our staff are out in the community today to visit each of these sites again so that we can look into the concerns that were raised in the video. I wanted to fact check that, and luckily the information is available on the state website that I'll get to in just a minute. But she also made a contradictory statement as well. Brown said at a December 29th afternoon news conference that 2 of the Minneapolis centers closed this year, including Quality Learning Center in Minneapolis just last week. That was the business that had the sign misspelled, so it said Quality Learning Center. But however, a department spokeswoman said later that the center has decided to remain open. Quality, meaning Quality Learning Center, featured prominently in the video. So what does that mean? What does it mean that you revoked a license, but they're operating anyway? How is that allowed? That's a problem. That's definitely a problem. So when the Star Tribune reached out to Brown, she declined to provide information about the state reviews of Quality Learning Center or Mako Childcare, which is a second business that recently lost its license. But the Minnesota Department of Human Services website, that's the state website I was referring to, lists the inspections that were done on each of these facilities, and it shows that Quality Learning Center was not compliant with state laws dating all the way back to May of 2022. So if you look at the website, and I'll show you a screenshot of it in just a second, it'll show you on the left-hand column all the dates that were, all the dates where the state essentially inspected the facility. And then it also provides a link that will give you a list of violations found at Quality Learning Center. And those violations include things like attendance records did not contain all required items. The program did not have a file for each child. How are you going to argue that you didn't find any evidence of fraud when there's no information about the children who are allegedly going there? The program did not have a file for each staff person. Children's files did not contain immunization documentation. The program did not have an emergency preparedness plan. This is all just from the visit in May of 2022. Yet it continued to receive state funding. And the last visit was in June of this year. And every single visit has a drop-down list, a link that'll give you a drop-down list of all the various violations that were found at the facility. So fraud has been a major issue in Minnesota, and there have been prosecutions. So I want to be clear about that, because the big narrative playing out right now is that, oh, it's been going on and no one's doing anything about it. But there absolutely have been prosecutions. And so Tim Walz is correct in noting that. Walz ordered a third-party audit of the 14 aforementioned programs in October, including the shuttered Housing Stabilization Services Program. The Minnesota governor also appointed Tim O'Malley to serve as Director of Program Integrity and Strengthened Fraud Prevention earlier this month. And in fact, unrelated allegations of fraud had been under investigation by state officials dating all the way back to the Biden administration. So this was in 2022 or beginning in 2022. Let's take a look at the next video and you'll get what I mean.
Did you come during their normal operating hours when you came to visit?
I came at 11 a.m., I believe, and I also came.
Sorry about that, guys. That's my mistake. I totally forgot to grab the video that I needed for that. But there have been multiple investigations and prosecutions. So those prosecutions include, over the last 5 years, law enforcement officials say fraud took root in pockets of Minnesota's Somali diaspora, as scores of individuals made small fortunes by setting up companies that build state agencies for millions of dollars worth of social services that were never provided. And as I mentioned in our original reporting of this story, federal prosecutors say that 59 people have in fact been convicted for the scheme so far. But something else that I really want to point out here, and by the way, the feds argue that, look, the Biden administration didn't do enough. There wasn't enough investigation taking place. And that's why now Joseph Thompson, this is Graphic 7, Assistant US Attorney for Minnesota, said at a press conference earlier this month, it is possible that half or more of the $18 billion billed to 14 services under the MDHS since 2018 is fraudulent. Now, that is a claim that hasn't been proven. And so federal prosecutors would need to actually investigate it and prove that the fraud is as widespread as they're claiming it is. However, the Minnesota Star Tribune did push back on the figure noted by federal prosecutors that as much as $9 billion was stolen in these fraudulent programs in Minnesota. I do have to disclose that the CEO and publisher for the Tribune is a gentleman by the name of Steve Grove. He actually previously served as Tim Walz's Commissioner of Employment and Economic Development, and this was during the COVID pandemic. Much of the alleged fraud, had to do with these COVID era programs. It doesn't mean the information is inaccurate, but it is important for you to know the identities of the people behind the publication. And in addition to that, the $215 million in fraud was discovered in one Minnesota program last October alone. And that program was tied to Feeding Our Future, which federal prosecutors under Biden began investigating in 2022. So again, there were investigations, there have been prosecutions, and there have been convictions. Some of the individuals who were convicted in the Feeding Our Future scandal have received federal sentences up to 28 years. So there are examples of real consequences here. And look, the allegations that are now being made in Nick Shirley's video are somewhat new. But again, just investigate it. It's not the end of the world. Don't downplay the potential fraud, but also don't take what Shirley is saying at face value either. There needs to be additional investigation. And in fact, it should be noted that members of Minnesota's Republican Party have admitted to essentially steering Nick Shirley toward this daycare story. And the Minnesota House Speaker, Lisa DeMuth, did confirm that her caucus helped point the creator in the direction of where to look. So it does kind of appear as though this was politically motivated and kind of organized by conservatives and Republicans in the state of Minnesota. For political reasons, sure, but at the end of the day, you have to prove the fraud. And if there is fraud, that is a problem, right? And so CNN wanted to kind of fact check Shirley's claims. And so they did some visits of their own to these daycare facilities. And I want you to take a look at how that went down.
Did you come during their normal operating hours when you came to visit?
I came at 11 a.m., I believe, and I also came the following day, later in the day. The point of it is not whether or not I came at the right time of their operation hours. The point is that blacked out doors, they can't give you any information. You call that number, no one answers. I wasn't trying to go inside, and there should be a way for somebody to actually be able to call that number and somebody to be able to answer. These aren't real businesses.
But surely you don't think a daycare should just be unlocked. You shouldn't be able to just walk into a daycare.
There should be a reception.
It is a reception.
Every daycare is locked.
It has their doors are locked.
And so, okay, you bring up a fair point. Then why can't they actually give me information how to enroll a child?
How do you know that all the allegations that you're making are true?
How do I know that they're true? Well, we showed you guys what was happening, and then you guys can go ahead and make your own analysis.
We're coming so we can make our own analysis. Are you 100% sure you're true?
Yeah, I am 100% sure I'm true.
CNN is looking into Shirley's claims.
Hi, my name's Whitney Wild. I'm a correspondent for CNN.
We reached out to several of the daycares featured in the now viral video. Only one daycare facility answered and said they are a legitimate business.
Oops. The way that ended wasn't what CNN was hoping for. I'm just guessing. But nonetheless, Shirley was actually proven wrong when it comes to at least one of the facilities. So I want to definitely be clear about that. So the facility that I'm referring to is ABC Learning Center. So CBS was actually shown, and I watched it. It's a local news report. Unfortunately, we can't use it for copyright reasons, but a local CBS affiliate was shown security camera footage showing children there on the exact same day that Shirley had visited. The footage also shows a woman dropping off her child at the facility at 9 a.m. that day, 3 hours before Shirley's visit. And a worker at the facility by the name of Hassan said that they would not open the door when Shirley arrived because he showed up with a group of 8 people. And ICE has been deployed in the area. And so they didn't want to open the door because they were concerned about the ICE activity in the area and they felt unsafe. But they did provide evidence that there are children there. They're operating as a childcare facility would. And so again, I'm not saying everything that Nick Shirley is claiming is wrong or has been proven wrong. That's actually not the case. Everything should be investigated though. And so far, at least one of these facilities appears to be operating as it should be. They did provide the evidence. So anyway, that's where we're at. I think that the idea of robbing all childcare facilities of federal funding because you found instances or you allege that there are instances of additional fraud in Minnesota is beyond unfair. And it adds weight to the argument that Tim Walz is saying here, that this is politically motivated. It's meant to cut funding to certain programs that help with social services. And if you are denying that the Trump administration has an inherent interest in cutting funding that actually helps Americans, as he just bleeds our money in foreign wars. I mean, do you have 2 brain cells to rub together? I think that's clear. But here's the thing, 2 things can be true at the same time. Fraud is wrong because it not only robs American taxpayers, it robs the people who the money was supposed to help. And that's an issue that infuriates me beyond words. But at the same time, is this being used for political purposes by Republicans in the Trump administration? Absolutely. Anyone who's denying that is just a liar, okay? If you're extreme on one end where you're like, oh, there's definitely fraud happening and it's definitely not being utilized for, this story isn't being utilized for political purposes, you're wrong. If you think that this is simply and purely a psyop and that there's no fraud happening whatsoever and we have nothing to worry about, you're also wrong. again, two things can be true at the same time. I know that's a difficult concept for people to grasp in a hyper-partisan environment that drives me crazy. But anyway, that's the story. We got to take a break. When we come back, we're going to switch gears and talk a little bit about Netanyahu's interview with Boebert yesterday. What's up, everyone? Welcome to our social break. Art Guy writes it and says, hi, folks. Happy New Year from the future here in Australia. Happy New Year. It's so good to hear from you. Art Guy is genuinely a fantastic art guy. He has painted amazing images of Charlie that I have on my wall in our guest room. Winter Scoop says, reminder, fireworks are illegal to set off in most cities. Also, keep water available and never hold explosive fireworks as you light them. That is very good tips. Good tips for sure. I personally have no interest in lighting fireworks, but if someone else at an event that I'm at wants to light them, I will allow it. Sexy Speed Racer, although no, I don't allow it if it's illegal. Sexy Speed Racer says 2026 cannot be worse than 2025. We just cannot tolerate that. Wind Spirit Feather says, Happy New Year, Anna and everyone. Yeah, a better year would be nice. Maybe Trump will go away and Bibi as well. Bibi going away would be the best thing in the world. And Palestine will recover, healing, love. That would be a dream. Yeah. All right, in our other member section, these are our YouTube members. We have California Young Turk who says, got my TYT merch for Christmas this year. Finally, so happy. That's awesome. Send us a picture wearing your merch. I really want to see it. Box says, this is the year I turn 42. I feel for you, Anna. We live in our prime. I really, really hope that this is not my prime, but you're probably right. Yeah. I'm not 40 yet, but I will be in July. And that's kind of scary because I still feel like I just graduated college or high school. Dav Mill in our super chat says, why Trump isn't a tyrant? He hasn't done anything to prevent his enemies from having guns, made it easier for Anna to get a carry permit. That's what you think. It's still really difficult to get a carry permit in California if she wants. For his other many faults, he hasn't done that. I mean, we'll see. I don't think, look, I am more of a believer in the Second Amendment than I'm sure Cenk prefers. In fact, I've opened up a lot when it comes to supporting the Second Amendment, and I'm not against having guns. I do think we need federal background checks without all the various loopholes. I don't think that the American population having access to guns is really a way of us fighting back against a tyrannical government that literally has the most advanced military weaponry imaginable. I hear what you're saying. I still think the Second Amendment is important, but I don't think that's the end all be all of determining whether or not our president is acting in an authoritarian fashion. Box says, Happy New Year, everyone. Happy New Year, Box. And exploring the Holos says, I'm going out to drink for the last time before quitting. Then I'm coming home to watch the rest. I love it. Have a good time, but be safe. All right, let's get back to the show. What's up, everyone? Chances are you are spending way too much on your phone bill, and that sucks. And wouldn't it be awesome if you actually got paid back for the data you don't use? Well, luckily, we've partnered with Noble Mobile, and it's absolutely fantastic. On their No Bull plan, you get unlimited data for just $50 a month. But the data you don't use, well, you actually get that back as cash. So you can check out more details over at tyt.com/switch. That's tyt.com/switch. When you sign up today, you actually get a $50 sign up bonus, but they're not going to be offering that forever. So definitely look into this before that offer expires. Switch to Noble today by visiting tyt.com/switch. All right, let's get to our next story.
Settler violence in the West Bank continues to rise, and that does threaten some regional stability. How are you addressing that?
Well, first of all, I think it's much bloated. You know, when they're talking about it, they're talking about a handful of kids. We actually located, it's about 70 kids. They're not from the West Bank. They're actually come from teenagers who come from broken homes, and they do things like chopping the olive trees, and sometimes they try to burn a home. I can't accept that. That's vigilantism. I'm taking that out.
Teenagers that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is referring to, effectively terrorists, are usually accompanied by their terrorist parents. So the idea that they're just, wild, unruly teenagers from broken homes is laughable to say the least. But that whole statement you heard from Netanyahu, bald-faced lie. And he claimed during this interview with Fox's Boebert that, just a few dozen rowdy teens are responsible for all the terror, all the damage, all the land theft, all the home theft that's been carried out by Israelis in the West Bank. All that settler violence that you've seen on camera, it's all part of your imagination, right? I mean, if Netanyahu's mouth is open, he is lying. Okay, he is incapable of telling you anything that is honest or true. So he pointed the finger at Palestinians, by the way, insisting that the Israelis, well, they're the true victims.
But they claim they put a false symmetry between these teenagers and 1,000, actually over 1,000 terrorist attacks against the settlers, families, mothers who are driving on the roads there with their children. Boom, they're attacked, they're slain. So there's no symmetry. I'm putting a special effort to stop this vigilantism. I can't accept it. Even if it's not parallel, even if it's not symmetrical, I want peaceful coexistence between the Israelis and the Palestinians who live in Judea, Samaria, which is part of our ancestral homeland.
He's right about one thing, and the one thing he's right about is that the violence is not symmetrical. It's asymmetrical violence. It's just that he's lying about where the power lies here. Because if you can remember, shortly after October 7th happened, we saw images of these violent settlers being given assault rifles. You think the Palestinians who are currently having their homes stolen from them, from said settlers, have assault rifles to defend themselves with? No, they don't, number one. And also, he's lying about the IDF's involvement. So according to the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, since October 7th, 2023, and up until November 13th of this year, Israeli security forces and settlers have killed at least 1,017 Palestinians in the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem. The West Bank, which is not governed by Hamas, had nothing to do with October 7th whatsoever, has been met with unfathomable violence to the point where over 1,000 Palestinians have been slaughtered by settler violence in the West Bank. And you have this pathetic genocidal clown lying to the American people while sucking up our resources to commit these atrocities, lying to the American people and making it seem as though the real victims are the aggressors and the terrorists who are raining terror on the Palestinians in the West Bank. By the way, nice visit to the United States to engage in propaganda that's honestly against the American people here. Okay, lying to the American people. And congratulations, Boebert, for facilitating that type of propaganda on your program. Among the victims, by the way, the 1,017 Palestinians in the West Bank who have been killed, among those victims were 221 children. During the same period, 59 Israelis were killed in Palestinian attacks or alleged attacks or armed clashes. So you want to talk about the symmetry here or the lack of symmetry here? Obviously, and in every case that we have reported on, right? Not just the violence that breaks out, that has broken out recently, but violence that has broken out in the West Bank in previous years, previous conflicts. Every single time, Palestinians disproportionately get killed, disproportionately. And this clown, again, has the audacity to lie to us and make it seem as though, no, roles are reversed here, please. The violence against Palestinians in the West Bank is not just about killings, by the way, the vast majority of which are actually carried out by Israeli forces, not settlers. So 3,139 attacks by Israeli settlers resulting in casualties and or property damage. So I guess we're just supposed to pretend like that doesn't exist. In addition, since January of 2023, over 700 Palestinian families comprising roughly of 3,900 people have been displaced due to settler attacks and access restrictions. They just steal their homes and they steal Palestinian land. That's what they do. In fact, I remember when Obama first got elected in 2008, part of the reason why he had a sour relationship with Benjamin Netanyahu, despite the fact that Obama's administration is the one that gifted the Israelis the Iron Dome, is because Obama had the audacity to politely ask Netanyahu to stop building illegal settlements in the West Bank. That's all it took. An American president just kindly asking, hey, maybe follow international law and don't build illegal settlements and steal Palestinian land. But remember, our president is supposed to be Israel's bitch. And so even politely asking Israel to follow international laws is just, it's unheard of. I can't believe Obama had the audacity to do that. So this year, as you can imagine, the attacks on Palestinians and their property has gotten a lot worse. And 33 Palestinian communities and areas have been fully emptied of their residents in the past 3 years. So I want to just give you some visuals so you can understand how bad things have gotten.
Gangs of violent Israeli settlers running riot in the West Bank, spreading terror in Palestinian communities. Brutal assaults caught on camera.
Oh, come on, don't hit her!
Since the ceasefire in Gaza, there's been a surge in violence here. Committed by extremist groups of settlers. October was the most violent month of attacks since UN records began in 2006. Israeli human rights groups, activists, and the opposition are accusing the government of stoking the attacks, and the Israeli army has been repeatedly accused of standing by and letting it happen. Hundreds of settlers have taken part in the violent attacks, but only a handful have been arrested and even fewer convicted.
I mean, the evidence is endless. The footage is endless. But Netanyahu still lies. He even claimed in his interview with Boebert that the Israeli government is doing everything it can to stop vigilante attacks on Palestinians. His own government, by the way, has greenlit dozens of new illegal settlements in the West Bank, which are considered illegal under international law. His own national security minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, also handed out weapons to Israeli settlers on October 7th. So that's what I was referring to earlier. And when I say weapons, I'm talking about assault rifles. And when an ABC reporter tried to get answers about whether violent settlers had been apprehended, both the IDF and the Israeli police shirked responsibility. Take a look.
Can you tell me how many settlers have been charged and imprisoned or punished as a result of violence over the last month?
Well, Ian, I think that's a question to be asked to Israeli police. And I say it's not so much something that the IDF is involved in that side of the process. And I don't have the current answer for you.
We put that exact same question to the Israeli police, but they pushed responsibility back to the army, telling us the IDF were responsible for the real-time prevention and handling of violent incidents throughout the region, including situations involving Palestinian and Israeli individuals.
Israeli police and the IDF stand by and allow it to happen if they're not also engaging in it or providing cover for it. That's the reality of the situation. And this is the government that we are funding. This is the government that we are proudly stating is our special ally as we become more isolated and alienated from the international community. It is beyond embarrassing. And for whatever it's worth, for anyone in the international community who might be watching this right now, we don't actually live in a true democracy here in the United States. It doesn't matter how many Americans or what percentage of Americans are against US support toward Israel. Our government, despite any party that's in charge, okay, it doesn't matter if it's Democrats or Republicans, is going to carry out the wishes of the Israeli government no matter what, because they control us. They control our government. Israel controls our government. We have a system of legalized bribery. So foreign interests are able to bribe our politicians. The Israelis are far more organized and have multiple organizations, several organizations operating out of the United States, specifically to lobby on behalf of Israel, to bribe our politicians on behalf of Israel. Yes, AIPAC happens to be the most notable lobbying group that does this. And there's also blackmail. I have no doubt that there are politicians and people in positions of power who are being blackmailed. And that's how we find ourselves in a situation where, I mean, this story more than anything, I think really pulls the wool over everyone's eyes when it comes to the reality of how undemocratic our political system has become. Doesn't matter, the majority of Americans don't want anything to do with Israel, don't want to send Israel more money for their atrocities. We're going to just keep doing it because our government doesn't represent us. That's the cold, hard truth. And data confirms that settlers act with near impunity. So a study that was conducted last year in 2024 by an Israeli organization looked at police investigations into the violence that was committed by Israelis against Palestinians, specifically in the West Bank. And here's what they found. From 2005 to September 2023, some 94% of investigations it was able to review were closed without an indictment, and just 3% ended in a conviction. And Donald Trump, our president, during a joint press conference this week with Netanyahu, was asked about the violence in the West Bank and whether he has any problem with it. Let's take a look.
Did you have a message for the Prime Minister about the West Bank? And are you at all concerned that settler violence, Israeli settler violence, could be undermining the peace plan?
Well, we have had a discussion, big discussion for a long time on the West Bank. And I wouldn't say we agree on the West Bank 100%, but we will come to a conclusion on the West Bank.
If I could ask, what is the disagreement?
Well, I don't want to do that. It'll be announced at an appropriate time. But he will do the right thing. I know that. I know him very well. He will do the right thing.
He will do the right thing. I mean, how pathetic was that? Like, for all the people who thought that Donald Trump was this strong president. I mean, I always thought that Trump has a huge ego and he wouldn't want to be humiliated or dog walked, especially in public like this. I couldn't be more wrong. He's happy to be dog walked. That was so humiliating. But just in time, just in the nick of time, you've got our old friend Barak Ravid over at Axios publishing this headline right after Trump made that statement. Trump top aides asked Netanyahu to change policy in occupied West Bank. Oh, did he? Did he ask? How did that work out? But in Netanyahu's interview with Boebert, he went so far as to deny that he and Trump had any significant disagreements about how to handle the West Bank. Let's take a look.
Because I think we both want to see a future in which that territory is not used for terrorist attacks. We've done a lot of things in that regard. We also want to build a lot of infrastructure there, both for us and for our Palestinian neighbors. And I think there's a lot of room to talk about it. But I think ultimately, Israel has to have the military control over this area because it's so tiny.
You have to have military control because it's so tiny. Oh, that tiny area that over 2 million Palestinians were crammed into. And now much of that land, over 50% of that land, is being occupied by Israeli forces who have made it abundantly clear that they have no intention of leaving. And the rest of Gaza is right there for the taking, according to Benjamin Netanyahu. I mean, it is, again, the biggest stain on modern American history that we are aligned with such a disgusting genocidal regime. It's just the truth. And unfortunately, the culture in Israel has become more and more right-wing. You see the interviews where they just willy-nilly dehumanize the Palestinian people. Doesn't matter. They're not human to them. And it's just beyond unsettling. And for people who bring up like a random conflict that's happening globally that the US actually isn't involved in, we're not aiding and abetting. They're like, why don't you care about this? Number one, I do care. It's not like I don't care at all. But the thing is, we don't have blood on our hands when it comes to some of those other conflicts that keep getting like thrown in our faces as like, squirrel, focus on this, don't focus on Israel. No, we are bankrolling what Israel is doing. We as Americans, because of our disgusting government, have blood on our hands. That's why we talk about this. And it is to the detriment of our own country that we support those atrocities. It is both immoral and inhumane and just wrong. It goes against everything this country is supposed to stand for by defending and aiding and abetting Israel. And then on top of that, there's the added layer of our people are suffering, yet we're funneling tens of billions of dollars to the country that's committing genocide in Gaza and essentially expansion into other countries like Syria and Lebanon. It's just so wrong. And yeah, I'm obsessed with the topic. I have no problem with anyone accusing me of being obsessed with the topic. I will continue talking about it. I will not be deterred. Anyway, there's a second half of this story that I want to talk about, but we got to take a break first. When we come back, I'll talk a little bit about what the Christian Armenian community has been dealing with when it comes to settler violence. You don't want to miss it. Sparky's writes in our tyt.com member section and says that don't forget to mention that Trump did a sentence commutation of a Minnesota, I guess a guy who had done like $1.6 billion worth of fraud, David Gentile. No. I mean, in the original story that we did about the fraud in Minnesota, we brought up, I think, 3 different people who had defrauded the system, but Trump let them go because all 3 of them happen to be Jewish, but there's an organization that specifically tries to get Jewish people in prison exonerated or pardoned by the president. And so they did their work, they did their lobbying, and who knows what kind of deals were made behind the scenes. But yeah, they got the pardons that they asked for. So I personally don't believe that Trump gives a damn about fraud at all. I really don't. I do think that this is being emphasized by Trump for political reasons. At the same time, though, I absolutely have a problem with fraud, regardless of who does it. And we shouldn't minimize it, guys. It is a problem. And when you allow fraud to go unchecked, which again, as I said in the story, Minnesota has done investigations, there have been convictions. It's not like they've totally ignored the issue. But when the public has this perception that there's no oversight of their own resources and that the system is being defrauded and there are no consequences, that leads to distrust toward these government institutions. And so if you're on the left and you want to drum up support for something like Medicare for All, for instance, you need to know that the public generally trusts the government to carry out these programs without defrauding the system or allowing others to defraud the system. So I think it is a serious issue and it shouldn't go unchecked. But at the same time, yeah, are Republicans like Trump, for instance, using it for political reasons? Yes, absolutely, 100%. Anyway, all right, I got to move on. Stiff Upper Lip says, it is okay, Anna. I will turn 60 in March. I don't look at it as everyone tells me, but the truth is still the truth, no matter what right-wingers say. I don't really have a problem with my age. I have a problem with my mortality, right? Like every year goes by faster and our time here is so temporary and finite And that's what scares me, that like there's so much I want to do and the years just keep flying by. And before I know it, it's going to be over. Like that scares the crap out of me. Anyway, Sexy Speed Racer says, Anna, if it's any comfort, turning 40 and 50 and 60 for me was a breeze. 35 was a tough one. Oh my God, you and me both, sister. Because I grew up in an era exposed to constant TV commercials that said, are you over 35? Then you need Garrito? I don't know what Garrito is. But things haven't changed that much, okay? You still get similar messaging today. Biohazard Dragon says, hey, Anna, Happy New Year's from Australia. The 40s are a great decade. You become more you and more grounded in your truths. I totally agree with that. I'm in my 50s and I still feel like I'm in my 30s, finally doing a PhD and absolutely loving it. Aside from a dodgy knee, age really is just a state of mind. I totally agree with you. Let's get back to the show. Welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm Anna Kasparian, and I wanted to get to the second half of this story regarding settler violence in, in the West Bank, also in Jerusalem. And this is a story I've been wanting to cover for some time, and today's the day to do it. So let's get right to it. The Armenian community in Jerusalem is now and has been under threat from encroaching Israeli settlers. So anyone under the impression that the only people who are being terrorized, the only people having their land and homes stolen from them by Israeli settlers are Palestinians or Palestinian Muslims, you'd be mistaken. This project is about essentially cleansing the area of everyone that isn't, part of the Israeli in-group, right? So Armenians have lived in the old city neighborhood of Jerusalem for more than 1,500 years, but now they are facing possible displacement. So the issue centers around a culturally significant area known as Cow's Garden, which covers about 25% of the Armenian quarter in Jerusalem. And for centuries, this land has been under the ownership of the Armenian Patriarchate of Jerusalem. Okay, so then a secretive land deal was signed that would turn Cow's Garden into something even more sacred, a luxury hotel. So in July of 2021, 3 members of the Armenian Patriarchate secretly leased the plot to the Israeli real estate company Zana Gardens Limited for 98 years in exchange of $2 million with annual with annual remunerations of around $300,000. The company had plans to build a 7-star hotel on the plot. Now, as you can imagine, there was quite a bit of backlash that resulted from this secretive deal. And so the Patriarchate member claimed that he was duped and tried to cancel the deal, and Armenians in the community began a legal challenge in Israeli courts. But if the deal is successfully pushed through, the Armenian quarter would be at risk of just fully disappearing. So here's more from a 2024 BBC report.
Members of the 2,000-strong Armenian community have been guarding this plot around the clock. They faced bulldozers and attacks by armed thugs since they pressured their church leader to go back on a land deal. He'd secretly signed it with a Jewish Israeli developer.
This may look like a car park, but it's incredibly valuable real estate in a place of huge religious significance. And it's now at the heart of a closely fought battle.
Armenians have been in the Holy City since the 4th century. Activists point out that the murky lease agreement could now mean losing homes and a seminary, a quarter of Armenian property here.
Everything was put in danger with this deal.
But settler groups are committed to taking over more and more of the land here. It's alleged they have links to the Armenian takeover.
So that legal battle is ongoing. And, the claim that, oh, I was tricked into signing the land deal. I don't trust the Israeli courts, to be honest with you. So I don't have much faith that it's going to play out fairly. But I don't know what the truth is. I don't know whether or not there was a secretive agreement and this individual knew exactly what he was doing, or if he was in fact tricked. It's going to have to play out through the courts. But in the meanwhile, and you'll find videos of this all over the internet, Armenians in Jerusalem continue to face persecution, much like Palestinians have been facing. So an Israeli organization called the Religious Freedom Data Center documents anti-Christian attacks. So it's an Israeli organization. I just want to emphasize that because there are lots of Israeli organizations that are doing good things. And this is one example. Their latest report recorded 31 anti-Christian hate crimes across the occupied territories between July and September of this year, of 2025. The Armenian Quarter was the most frequently targeted site. 6 of those 31 attacks were carried out against Armenian Christians. And those attacks included things like spitting, verbal abuse, online incitement, vandalism of signage or defacement, and also trespassing. And according to a 2024 Associated Press report, the Rossing Center, which tracks anti-Christian attacks in the Holy Land, documented about 20 attacks on Armenian observers, Armenian private property, and church properties in 2023, many involving ultra-nationalist Jewish settlers spitting at Armenian clergy or graffiti reading "Death to Christians" scrawled on the quarter's walls. And this June, a group of Israelis allegedly attacked the Armenian monastery and other Christian holy sites during a raid that took place on the Armenian Quarter. So anyone who's not part of the Israelis in group, they are vulnerable to this type of attack. It doesn't matter if they're Muslims or if they're Christians. And I think it's important for people to know that, because I think the Israeli propaganda has worked out stupendously in the United States as it pertains to demonizing all Muslims as dangerous. And it's really sad that that has happened. But while they use the excuse of, oh, dangerous Muslims to provide cover for the violence that they carry out, well, what's their argument when it comes to Christians? And when is the propaganda campaign about violent, dangerous Christians going to start? Because I guarantee you they will resort to that. So this is really just about stealing property and land. That's it. At the end of the day, that's what this is. And you have to call it like you see it. And if you engage in like tribal thinking and you only think your group matters, whether you're Christian, whether you're Jewish, whether you're whatever, right? No, when you provide cover for injustice that's carried out against one group, it will come back to haunt you. I guarantee it. All right, let's do one more story before Cenk joins us for the second hour. So conservatives on social media, X in particular, have been voicing their displeasure, their anger at the Trump administration and its failure to essentially carry out Trump's campaign promises. And as a result, they're thinking about fighting back by refusing to pay their taxes. Now, their frustrations extend beyond the failures of the federal government. They're upset with state governments as well. But this sort of disillusionment, and I should be clear, it's really a bipartisan issue. There are plenty of Democratic voters who are very upset with the way the Democratic Party has carried out its duties. And so there's one potential politician who might actually do something about it, which we're going to get to in just a minute. But before we do, let's first explain why conservatives are absolutely fed up and what they're saying on X. For one, they're outraged at the Minnesota fraud scandal, which alleges that billions in taxpayer dollars were stolen by Somali immigrants. So that has been a longstanding issue in the state of Minnesota. There have been dozens of convictions. There's a new round of allegations as a result of this Nick Shirley YouTuber who put out a viral video recently. And so those allegations need to be investigated. We can't just take what he claims at face value. One of the facilities that was featured in his video, by the way, proved to local media that they are operating just as they're supposed to. They provided security footage showing children there. Nonetheless, conservatives are outraged about that story, and right wingers are also furious that Trump hasn't followed through on his campaign promises. So one of the more vociferous critics of Trump's is Nick Fuentes, and his messaging has kind of taken off on the right. So here's what he takes jabs at Trump for. He says, Golden Age update, 325,000 deportations for 2025. Trump bombed Nigeria, bombed Venezuela, threatening to bomb Iran again. Fifth Netanyahu visit, Trump wins Israel prize. Epstein files redacted, YouTubers doing the FBI's job, $5 billion for refugee resettlement. Now, Savannah Hernandez, who's also a contributor and commentator for Turning Point USA, also went viral after she threatened to stop paying her taxes. She says, F it, I'm not paying taxes this year. And then when the IRS comes after me, I'll blow that up into a huge national story about how the government will destroy your life over a couple $1,000s. Meanwhile, the Pentagon just failed their 8th straight audit in a row. Somalis literally come to the US just to defraud us. I don't agree with this at all, by the way. No, Somalis don't just come to the US to defraud us. That's a blanket statement about all Somalis, and I think that's super unfair. But that's what she claims, that they come here to defraud us out of billions, and illegals are prioritized for Section 8 housing and welfare programs over Americans. I'm not paying for it anymore. Now, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene added some fuel to this fire, responding to the Post saying that this is how angry Americans are, and rightfully so. With nearly $40 trillion in debt and Social Security becoming insolvent in 2033. Now imagine if millions of Americans did this. Meaning, imagine if millions of Americans withheld their taxes because of the neglect of our federal government. And look, I've actually floated this before, and Cenk's like, this is not a good thing to do. And I ultimately do agree with him, because our taxes fund programs that are important. I mean, part of the reason why I think Democrats caved when it came to the whole government shutdown battle is because people were going to lose their SNAP benefits and people were going to go hungry. Families and children were going to go hungry. So while I totally agree that our government has totally failed the American people, I think that refusing to pay taxes would further damage whatever's left of the government that they do somewhat effectively. But I want to fight back too. So I'm wondering if there's a way to kind of tinker with this so it causes less damage to programs that actually work, while actually punishing the politicians who, I don't know, make decent salaries paid for by American taxpayers, get government-funded healthcare, which they deny to the American people, of course. How about we focus on ways to deny our members of Congress the benefits and the perks that they get to take advantage of as they take half of the year off, and then they spend the rest of the time simply fundraising or engaging in theater during these like committee hearings. The Hodge twins say, at this point, there is no reason to pay taxes anymore. Then you have Graham Allen. The whole country should stop paying taxes until the corruption ends. Hit them where it hurts. Demand accountability by taking away their money. So as 2025 comes to a close, let's actually take a minute to remember the very beginning of this year, because things were very different. So Elon Musk's Doge initiative, for instance, was surrounded in controversy from the day it began. And then it eventually burned out and died with a whisper. But the idea of the program was popular even while Musk was making a mess of things. And that's because I think most Americans do feel that our resources are being squandered, wasted. Polls show mixed feelings about government cuts and Doge. So this is a New York Times graphic. They compiled a number of surveys to make this graph. And you can see that Americans were pretty sour on Doge and Musk's leadership, but a majority supported the concept of cutting government waste, which was Doge's alleged agenda. And even more felt that government is inefficient. And so it doesn't surprise me at all that Americans are like, why am I busting my ass, paying a ton in taxes? And it feels like I'm not really getting any representation in return. And I, generally speaking, agree with that. And there needs to be a way for like-minded Americans who are frustrated with our broken political system to work together and demand more. There needs to be, honestly, a purge in our government. There need to be deep reforms, because the problem that we're seeing right now stems from the big underlying issue, right? And that underlying issue is that anyone can be bought. Like any politician can be bought. And so when you live in a system where bribery is baked into the way politicians operate, they're gonna be corrupt. AC/DC said it best: dirty deeds done dirt cheap, okay? And it happens every day. All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, Cenk Uygur joins us. Can't wait. We're going to talk a little bit about the ongoing MAGA war and more. Don't miss it.
What contributions to the progressive cause are you most proud of? I mean, I don't have super high aspirations for a singular role that I can play in the movement or anything. I try to present myself as what I think that I am, which is a progressive man who is driven by a, I think, well-interrogated and well-organized system of values that I try to stay consistent on, and I demonstrate that that's the sort of life that a person can lead and be successful and be happy and all of that. And that should not need to be done, but there are so many people on the right that are trying to push men in the opposite direction that I want to be able to do that. Along the way, if I can get people to care about some topics that they wouldn't necessarily care about, or that for some men they might think that's not a topic that they should be focused on, that's definitely something that I relish doing. And along the way, I mean, we've been able to introduce people to a lot of candidates. That's been a big part of what we've done. Not all of them necessarily got in office. Probably most of them did not. And a lot of them you might not even remember their names. But it was great to be able to provide people the platform where they had the chance of, making a difference. Obviously AOC and all that, but there's been a lot of great people along the way.
In the bonus episode for the members, we do some inside baseball. We're gonna look at John's desk. Nice little spaceship here. Nerd. But it is kind of look cool. Who has Legos? Oh no. He's taking apart a keyboard. Who has a mouse pad that's this big? He's got a dog with a nose that you can hang something on. You know what this desk screams to me? Nerd. And that's how we like him. We love Johnny Pie. He's got his own personality like everybody does at TYT. Come meet us all in the bonus episodes. TYT.com/team. David Sorrell, Anita Turner. It's Adam Green drop by.
Charlemagne.
Congressman, great to have you. It's great to be with you, Cenk.
Your show is a great thing. You're informing people. A lot of the shows that I live on, my CNN, my MSNBC, and even Fox, and any of the other shows, NPR, they are so quick to decide that they know what this building means today.
The one thing that I hate that politicians do, they talk about the people they should be talking to.
Do they have any idea that they're the establishment and that they're hated? Or do they not realize that at all?
People are so deeply in their little universe. I think it's very easy to not really question what you're doing.
Voters have a right to ask questions of any nominee, whether they're independent, Republican, or Democrat.
The system is wobbly, that suppresses competition.
How is it the year 2024 and we're still like, maybe they'll talk about paid medical? Like, how is that like at one level it's like, this is what we're talking about now. You're like, it's 2024.
And that's always been the critique, your critique of us is, well, you guys give good speeches, you put out good tweets, but you're not wielding actual power. Now we're starting to.
My favorite news platform by far. It's not even close.
It's about a country and a principle, and that's what you and I both worked to achieve, and I'm so glad that at least half the battle has now been won.
If you want to go really hear what's going on honestly, you should tune into the Young Turks.
Thanks for doing such a great job. Please keep it up. Hang tough.
Yeah.
That makes me so happy.
Oh, I like making you happy.
I didn't know about that.
This is a happy Anna-Kasparian. You're welcome, YouTube.
Join the Dragon Squad by becoming a YouTube channel member. Click the join button below or sign up on tyt.com/join to get access to fun emojis, a member-only chat, exclusive shop TYT designs, ad-free watching, and so many other amazing perks. Plus, you get bragging rights for being part of the coolest community on the internet and help us drive real positive change in the world. The Dragon Squad awaits, so join today.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk Ugrianic is sparing with you guys. Nick Marie 0283 also with us, joined through tyt.com/join. Thereby making the holidays a little brighter. We appreciate it. And Box gifted 5 Young Turks memberships on YouTube because he's a bit of an American hero. And Anna, is it true that they're describing you as a winter angel in that outfit? Yes, a YouTube member did write that in. We'll read that later.
I'm a little bit of a bad girl though. I don't know if I'm an angel.
Oh, okay. Sounds even more interesting. Okay.
All right. Well, Cenk, I know you're excited about this next topic because you did a live video on it as it was developing, and it's just this like ongoing insane feuding on the right, mostly media people. So we're going to talk about 2 examples. The first being Mark Levin and Megyn Kelly, and then later we'll talk about Alex Jones getting real hurt that someone is out conspiracy theorying him, if that makes any sense. Anyway, let's start with Mark Levin. Levin and Megyn Kelly are still trading blows online as this conservative civil war of sorts continues to heat up. There's no signs of it letting up. Cenk, I know you did a live video on this as it was developing, but I'm curious what your 2 cents are.
Yeah, so this is my favorite thing in the world, and not because of what people think, oh, you're on the left, so you like the right wing fighting. No, I like the right wing rebelling against the establishment and the uniparty. So that's why I love this story. There's more of that in here, but the Alex Jones part is a super curious part. I have no idea which direction that brother's going. So for the first time in this MAGA civil war, I'm a little lost on that character plot development. So, but we'll show you all the videos and facts and we'll make up our minds together.
Before we get to the Alex Jones, Candace Owens, Laura Loomer kerfuffle, I want to start off with Mark Levin and Megyn Kelly. Now, Levin, as you can imagine, has been hounding Megyn Kelly for months, not over what she herself has to say about anything, but because of her unwillingness to disavow Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, both of whom Levin absolutely despises because they are very critical of Israel. Now, since Turning Point USA's America Fest event, Mark Levin has been attacking another person as well, and that's Jack Posobiec because of this moment at the event. He apparently held up a rosary, and that offended the sensitivities of Mark Levin. I don't know why, but look, Cenk, you made an argument that Posobiec did this and essentially baited Levin, and Levin stupidly took the bait. He criticized Levin Levin also criticized Posobiec for taking a picture with Myron Gaines, an influencer who he labeled as anti-Semitic. And apparently in the picture, you can see Gaines wearing what's described as an anti-Semitic shirt, making light of the Holocaust. So if that's what the shirt in fact is making light of, that's pretty gross. So I'm upset about that as well. But Mark Levin using that to attack like Megyn Kelly is a weird choice, which we'll get to in just a minute. On Monday, he wrote that a week ago, Posobiec was a little known bigot and Jew hater. Now he's a little known delusional bigot and Jew hater. Prayer doesn't seem to be working for him. In fact, he's so busy hyper posting. When does he have time to pray? And then he implied that Turning Point should ban Posobiec from future events. I love how this guy thinks he's like the dictator here. Like he gets to decide what every organization does or doesn't do. But he's calling for Posobiec to be banned from future events, writing decision time. And Megyn Kelly responded to that, saying Mark Levin, who is spiraling because he mocked Catholics praying the rosary and his hatred is evident for all to see, actually thinks he can besmirch Jack Posobiec out of Turning Point USA. Good use of the word besmirch. This is genuinely funny, as if TPUSA would ever bow to Christian loather Levin, dying laughing. I don't know, Megyn, they might, but I'm curious what you think, Cenk.
Yeah, so I love every piece of this because there's so many interesting plot developments here. All right, number one, so Myron Gaines' shirt, in my opinion, is out of bounds. The fact that it's out of bounds is just noted. He doesn't get canceled, nothing happens to him. I just am not in favor of that. In 80% of the charges of anti-Semitism, it's nonsense. It's just a way of defending Israel. They planted all these trope landmines, etc. But 20% of the time, are some people against Jews? Yeah, of course, right? And so Myron Gaines seems to be in that category. So now what Levin does from there on is what's, of course, standard Israel first procedure. Okay, we've got a guy who's said plenty of bad things, but in that particular case was wearing a bad shirt, okay? So, okay, but I don't agree with him at all. All right, so then he says, since Posobiec was standing next to him and smiling, Posobiec is canceled. No, there's no smear by proxy, smear by standing next to a guy. And he's like, but in the picture he was smiling. I don't know what he was thinking in the picture. What is this nonsense, right? Then he says, okay, then Posobiec brings out the rosary beads at TPUSA. That's of course to rub it in the face of Jews and saying you don't belong here. And that's why he's an anti-Semite. That doesn't mean that at all, okay? I don't, it is another giant step because now he has to call Posobiec a quote unquote Jew hater. And this is Megyn, now we're at the third level. This is 6 degrees of Mark Levin, right? So now we're at the third level, which is Megyn Kelly, says she won't condemn Posobiec, who wouldn't condemn Myron Gaines. She's a Jew hater and she needs to be canceled, etc. Now this is
so crazy.
It's totally
so
nuts.
Crazy. It's like high school drama, like this whole guilt by association. Like, can you imagine going around demanding that people condemn others that you don't like and then calling them bigots and anti-Semites because they refuse to disavow the people you don't like? That's crazy. How about you judge someone based on their own character, what they say, what they do? But no, this is like a cult. It's genuinely a cult. Anyway, sorry, continue.
Yeah, well that leads, of course I totally agree, and that leads to 2 other things. So now, the reason why Mark Levin does this is because he's used to it. And in the past, Anna, as we know, to be fair to Mark Levin, this one trick pony was the greatest pony in cancel culture history. You call somebody an anti-Semite, they're done forever. Their career is ruined, nuked, gone, right? So he's like, wait, I don't get it. I already called you an anti-Semite. Why are you still here? Because normally what would happen is the rest of mainstream media would come in and go, that's it, we officially declare Megyn Kelly an anti-Semite. She's the worst person and anyone associated with her is the devil, etc. And she would be nuked. But mainstream media doesn't have that kind of power anymore. So Megyn Kelly stands here entirely unnuked, right? So Levin's like, I don't get it. I already canceled her. Hey, everybody else, snap to it. We're canceling her. She's now a slight 1% Israel critic. Everyone destroy her. But he doesn't get that he doesn't control everyone anymore. But he does control something very important related to TPUSA. I'll get to that in a second. But what were you gonna say, Anna?
So I wanted to give you Mark Levin's response to Megyn Kelly, who said that, or called him out for mocking Christians or Catholics specifically after Jack Posobiec held the rosary. He decided to basically invoke an old scandal. And the scandal happened back in 2018 where NBC had fired Megyn Kelly after she questioned why it would be considered racist for a white person to paint their face black for a Halloween costume. So yesterday, this is what Levin said while invoking that scandal. Meg Kelly, whose ratings were so bad on NBC, she became a laughingstock, was canned for promoting blackface on Halloween. You see, she was always a degenerate bigot. That's interesting, Mark, because you never had a problem with Megyn Kelly at all until very recently. So she's always been a degenerate bigot and you loved her until now? Why? What happened? What changed? Yeah. This is why she's cool with Candace Owens and Jack Posobiec. This is why she slobbers over Katarlson. This guy is a total lunatic. She's part of the woke Reich, the queen of the modern clan, more to come. Kelly hit back without mentioning her past remarks. You're just upset because I'm not afraid of you or your baseless slurs. You're an old, irrelevant, bitter, angry man who could never make it in the Fox News primetime. We used to laugh at you there for your red-faced tantrums over everything. Oh, that was pretty good. Now, Breaking Point's host Emily Jasinski, went back and forth and basically found how Levin reacted to Kelly getting fired in 2018. So she dug this up, and I'm so happy she did, because here's what Levin had to say back in 2018. The real reason Megyn Kelly was fired by Andrew Lack. So he's sharing a piece about it. MSNBC didn't fire Joy Reid, yet NBC is pushing out Megyn Kelly. Interesting. So he's basically bringing up that scandal from 2018 to serve his own purposes today, when at the time in 2018, he was totally defending Megyn Kelly. So yeah, that's the kind of guy he is. I mean, again, the number one priority for someone like Mark Levin, it's not doing the right thing. It's not protecting vulnerable communities from bigotry or hatred. It's not about reporting the truth. It's really just about defending Israel. And if you happen to be an individual on the right who has refused to disavow other conservatives who have been critical of Israel, well, according to Mark Levin, you're part of the third, what was it?
The woke Reich.
The woke Reich. I mean, it's just so disgusting and pathetic.
So let's talk about who changed, because I'm pretty sure that the entire right wing defended Megyn Kelly on the blackface comment. So now all of a sudden, Mark Levin is a super liberal who is outraged and aghast at her blackface comment. I don't remember that. So obviously, Mark Levin changed, right? And in fact, Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro were both never Trumpers. And my God, have they changed. And in fact, if you track it, you will see that Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro have either supported Donald Trump or been completely against Donald Trump, depending on what Donald Trump's position was on Israel at that time. Gee, I wonder why Mark Levin changes his position, because he's not a right winger. He's certainly not a left winger. He's not any winger. All he cares about is Israel, period. 100%, not 99.9%. So if he views you as pro-Israel, he loves you, you're God's gift to humanity. If he thinks that you're 0.5% against Israel, that's it. The rosary beads means you're a Jew hater, etc. Side note, real quick, like he did the rosary beads. Now remember, there's a lot of anti-Muslim propaganda going on at the same time. Two, if I had come out and said, that's it, Jack Posobiec is a Muslim hater. Look, he did the rosary beads. People would be like, what are you talking about? Are you insane? Have you lost your mind? And imagine then I said, no, that's it, I cancel him. And I cancel Megyn Kelly for talking to him. Everyone would laugh uproariously. But yet these guys are 100% used to doing it. So now we get back to, well, why does Levin even think he has the power to do that? One, in the past, that power was 100%. So again, I get where he's coming from. But number two, Anna, remember TPUSA had $400 million in donor money, not investment, just flat out donors. And so they paid for a certain message, right? And when at the end they didn't get that exact message they wanted from Charlie, they were very mad. I'm not saying anything else about that. I'm just saying it is on the record that they were very mad. And it was on the record that they wanted Tucker Carlson canceled and anyone who opposed Israel canceled. So what Mark Levin is saying is, hey, donors to TPUSA and just about everything else, you're to cancel this person, and that person. So now, in the past, again, donors had 100% control. But now they've lost their own base. They've lost the grassroots. So they're at war with their own base, and it's amazing to see, because it was never their base in the first place. The reason the pro-Israel donors went there is because they thought it was easier to trick the right wing. Now they've come to find out, not as easy as they thought, and so now they're reeling, and they never planned for a second line of attack. Their only line of attack is kings of cancel culture. We cancel everyone in our path. So finally, Anna, at this point, what's amazing about this fight is this: if you ask the person in establishment media, like you say, like who cares about Mark Levin? He's now the most irrelevant person. I did a tweet the other day about how he's united the country because now literally everyone hates him. Left, right, center, no one can stand Mark Levin. With one giant asterisk, everyone in Washington and everyone on cable news. If you ask them who represents the right wing more, Mark Levin or Tucker Carlson, I think that they're still foolish enough, out of touch enough, ludicrous enough, biased enough that they would say Mark Levin.
Yeah, I mean, look, when it comes to conservatives, I do think that the pro-Israel donors thought that the right wing would be easier to manipulate. But it's hard to manipulate any group of people when you have a live stream genocide for 2 straight years. So, like, that's the thing about this whole situation, Jake. Like, the underlying issue happens to be the atrocities carried out by our special ally against innocent people. And the sense of entitlement in which that can go on for 2 straight years. We can all see it with our own 2 eyes for 2 straight years. We can witness our own government put the American people on the back burner as he prioritizes the Israelis. That's all in our face for 2 years straight. And we're supposed to pretend like it's not happening for what reason? How would it benefit conservatives, the left, anybody in this country to pretend like what's happening right now, what has been happening for 2 years, didn't in fact happen? No, Netanyahu effed up. And he's lost the American people for the most part. And so Mark Levin doesn't know what to do with that. And guess what? Turning Point USA can be funded till their eyeballs pop out, okay? But it's not gonna matter if they've lost the people. And if they're gonna continue providing cover for Israel, they're gonna lose support. And so what good is your money if you lose support?
Yeah, and it's beyond that. So the right wing, some of them are upset about the genocide, and some of them are actually, and I was so happy to see this, actually did mean pro-life. Like, because so many hypocrites in politics overall. But right, and we were like, okay, you say you're in favor of life, but Israel just killed 10,000 kids, 12,000 kids, etc. And at some point, Tom Massey, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and a bunch of others were like, yeah, no, I can't stand them killing kids anymore. I can't stand it. And now it's up to 20,000. They just keep going and going and going. So God bless those principled conservatives on that. But the second part of it is, I think, honestly bigger. They caught Israel with its hand in our pocket. They're like, whoa, what are you doing, brother? And they notice, oh my God, there's 300 billion missing. Did we give Israel $300 billion? Wait a minute, that is not a little amount of money. And now they're beginning to find out that there's a new memorandum of understanding that they're cooking up where we would owe them around $100 billion guaranteed for the next 20 years. So now that they saw the guy's hand in their pocket, they're like, you think I'm gonna let you keep your hand in my pocket, dude? Are you insane? No, I'm gonna stop that robbery because I'm not a sucker. And Anna, the thing that's enraging people the most is they keep treating people like they're suckers.
Yes, that's very true. So I'm on Megyn Kelly's side in this specific, conservative war. But when we come back from the break, I do want to talk about Alex Jones feuding with Candace Owens. I think he's a little jelly. I'll tell you why when we come back.
All right, guys, as usual, I'm gonna read a lot of these blind on a Wednesday. Collecting Miscellany, I wrote it on tyt.com. So since there's some fraud in Minnesota childcare system, therefore we must withhold all funds from everyone until we figure things out. Okay, so since we know there's fraud in the Defense Department, they never pass an audit. That means we'll withhold all funds from the Pentagon effective immediately, right? By the way, Eclectic, again, I'm not making this up. You can go see it with your own eyes, and I know you know that, but now there's a lot of people in the right wing going, yeah, they failed their 8th audit. No, I'm not interested in giving them more money. And by the way, they can't account for $400 billion. $400 billion.
So no. I love when we get united on things that are true. God, that's the best feeling, okay? So it's begun. We're not near the end. We're still in the beginning portion of this, but it is definitely a good development. Jedi 6 said, this is from earlier in the show, I thought Elon and the Doge team was uncovering this kind of fraud. I guess not. Elon didn't uncover any fraud other than himself. At the end, he declared, I found the fraud. It was me, I'm leaving, bye. Okay, he couldn't find $35 billion in oil subsidies. Come on. Oh, gee, I wonder where the money is. Couldn't find any fraud on the Pentagon. Yeah, all right. Tell me that you suck at what you claim to do without telling me. All right, anyways, let's go to YouTube members. Magic Dragon Wizard says, hello to everyone, blessed be to all, happy new year to all. Right back at you, we appreciate you. Sid Life 365 says, let's go TYT, happy new year. I'm just ending a DJ set on Kick. Oh, that's fun. Okay, I Love Edna says, my New Year's wish, avoid World War III, good one. Okay, we all join you in that one, except the people in government, of course. God, isn't that like? God, I don't want you to get dispirited, but the very worst of us are in charge, are in the government, at almost at all times. It's like the donors trying to find the very worst people in the country that have no moral core at all, so that it could be replaced with money and they could do whatever the donors tell them. And they do. They find those people. Their names are Ted Cruz, Mitch McConnell, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Hakeem Jeffries, etc. Anyways, Cancho D. Dong Chim writes in, I lost my mom this year. I don't see how 2026 can be worse, but I don't believe it'll ever get better. Unless we fight this evil that's overtaken our country, we will be literal slaves. Guys, though, I mean, you saw the story Anna did about young men beginning to revolt, conservatives beginning to revolt about paying taxes. No, the revolt is here. That's why I started the Revolution Show. You gotta trust me on it. The revolt has definitely begun. We're at the very beginning of it. But so I'm very excited about 2026. Luna Tickles says the settlers have been doing this for years. Well, the settlers have done every kind of terrorism there is in the world. Here it is, Christina Elisa Brown saying Anna definitely has the winter snow angel look. So one comment I saw earlier.
Thank you.
Shan Shan says, I love my 40s. My body isn't clinging on to body fat. My face thinned out. The only thing that humbles me every now and then is my lower back. I think in a lot of ways, the 40s are great, the 50s are great. But anyways, so listen guys, Noble Mobile, you crazy? Make sure you're saving money, $50 bonus right now. And you save money every single month and it doesn't affect anything else. TYT.com/switch. All right, back on TYT, Jank, Anna, and Original Props. Original Props not only joined, but gifted 5 Young Turks memberships on YouTube right away, thereby making him an original American hero. We appreciate you. And Chef 305 cooking at TYT.com. Thanks for being a member through there. That helps a lot. TYT.com/join to do that. Casper.
Well, if you thought that the right-wing infighting was bad already, buckle up as we get into the details of this feud between Alex Jones, Candace Owens, and yes, unfortunately, Laura Loomer makes a cameo. So let's get into it. Alex Jones has decided to start a fight against Candace Owens. And it could be because of the fact that the man known internationally probably for being the top conspiracy theorist in the country is getting beat by Candace Owens and her ongoing investigation into Charlie Kirk's assassination. Now, Alex Jones purports that he has a problem with Candace Owens essentially disseminating false information. To which I say, Cenk, your 2 cents?
What in the world?
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah. I remember Alex Jones is the guy who lost a defamation suit that was filed against him from the parents of Sandy Hook children who were killed in the Sandy Hook mass shooting. He was going around saying that it was a false flag so the government can take guns away from law-abiding Americans. And that led to the literal family members who lost their children getting harassed by members of Alex Jones's audience. So that's the guy who is now judging others, which is really interesting. Now, that's not to say that everything that Candace Owens has been saying on her show is accurate or has been proven, but it is rich to hear what he has to say about Candace Owens and her sleuthing, if you will. So Alex Jones is also furious at Laura Loomer because Loomer took credit for Jones turning on Candace Owens. Apparently, he didn't want the public knowing about that, so we'll get to that in just a minute. But this is all very complicated. I'm gonna do my best to kind of simplify it and give you all the details. So on Christmas Eve, Alex Jones posted the following. It's all coming out and Candace Owens doesn't care that she has accused a bunch of innocent people with ironclad alibis of being in a conspiracy against Charlie Kirk's life. I'm sad. Now that I am investigating her, it's incredibly clear that it's all premeditated manipulation. I am completely blown away. He also went so far as to accuse Candace Owens of being part of a globalist conspiracy, claim that she is CIA and MI6. Meanwhile, Alex Jones has been supportive of the CIA's operations in Venezuela. So chew on that. In response, by the way, Laura Loomer writes, I'm proud to say that I am responsible for Alex Jones seeing the light as it pertains to how malicious and insane Candace Owens has become. This is Laura Loomer, by the way, calling other people insane. A couple weeks ago, Alex Jones and I had a very long private conversation about some bad actors in the woke right. And Alex told me he was starting to come around to what I have been saying for at least 2 years. Eventually, more people will wake up to this psyop. So InfoWars in response, well, they responded quickly. It was fast and furious. Jones said that Loomer's behavior was mean, uncool, and just the way she is, though he still considers her a friend, which leads me to believe this conversation definitely happened. He also stated that he did not discuss Owens with Loomer. I don't believe him. And on top of that, Harrison Smith, who's another host over at InfoWars, said this of Loomer. You have done so much damage to the InfoWars brand. Okay. Everyone knows you are an Israel first operative. We do not want to be associated with you. It was obviously a mistake for Alex to ever talk to you. So Alex did talk to her, apparently. He just didn't want the public to know that that conversation happened. And he turned on Candace Owens immediately after that conversation. But Jones has continued to attack Candace Owens. He is stating that her claims don't make sense, her sources are unreliable, and she might be an MI6 psyop to destroy Trump and Turning Point USA. He's actually now kind of part of the Republican establishment. He's like screaming from the mountaintops, what about the midterms? What about the midterms? Candace Owens is like, I don't care about the midterms. I don't care about the Republican Party. Whereas Alex Jones is very much concerned about the Republican establishment and winning in the midterms. And Owens is telling according to Jones, Owens is telling conflicting stories about how she met her husband, whose father is a life peer in the British House of Lords. Anyway, so he's attacking family members now. And Nick Fuentes has piggybacked off that attack. He and Owens have also been feuding. So it's just a mess. Like everyone seems to hate each other. Everyone seems to be fighting each other. Alex Jones appears to be very embarrassed by his association with Laura Loomer. Nonetheless, that association does exist. Cenk, back to you.
Yeah, it was confusing until Laura Loomer got into the picture. So I'm like, wait, they both claim there's a deep state. Are there two deep states? Are they fighting each other? I've lost track of which side the deep state's on, right? And Alex Jones seemed to have like a personal vendetta against Candace Owens, and maybe he's, for the reasons you state, Anna, that she's glomming onto his conspiracy territory, and he's like, wait, this is my corner, okay? He's been peddling that stuff for a long time, etc. But normally though, Alex Jones would be the one telling you about the nefarious deep state stuff that's going on that Owens is talking about. So now is he pro deep state?
No, it's amazing. It's amazing, right? Okay. Because look, as putting out these judgments and making these claims about Candace Owens. And look, I am not able to verify her claims. And so I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole. But my main point is he's still engaging in conspiracy theories of his own while judging others of being conspiracy theorists. So what do I mean by that? Here's one of the latest videos featuring Alex Jones. You'll get a little taste of what I'm talking about.
You have confirmed, and I have confirmed separately. I didn't tell you. I should have called you back last night. I got a call from a big journalist as I was driving home at 6 o'clock last night, and I can't say the person's name. And in fact, they didn't want me to even go there because they'll figure out who it is. But I don't know what I'm supposed to do at this point. Bongino calls up and wants us all to know he's coming after us. I mean, for what? I mean, so my point is that what you told me is they're literally up there wargaming, coming after you and me because we're and Steve Bannon basically, because we're the ones on air that actually know what we're doing. We're not coming about Bongino. That's not even who is quarterbacking at the White House, an enemies list, opposition research, the DOJ investigating us right under Trump's nose. And so instead of just calling up Trump, because Flynn yesterday said, I can call him, but he goes, I agree with you, Alex, it's just best to put it out there for everybody's safety, to get the grassroots to know that this is the deep state trying to use the Trump admin arrogantly to point the Death Star at the people that understand how to actually defeat the globalists.
So he's claiming that there are nefarious figures within the Trump administration who, behind Trump's back, are putting together a list of targets in which Alex Jones is included. And the whole point of the list is to neutralize these individuals. That's what he's claiming in that video.
Yeah, okay, but so there is a deep state and they're still targeting Alex Jones, but their deep state that now works for Donald Trump, and he loves Donald Trump and he supports Donald Trump, but he's just saying that maybe Donald Trump doesn't know that this deep state is attacking all of his supporters. But they never explain who the deep state is and why they would do this. So, which, I know it's funny because has Alex Jones ever explained it? But when you look at the comment section in that video, and I watched the whole thing just to get a sense of the context here and what they're talking about, you see all of the commenters who are all right wing saying, yeah, we know who the deep state is. It's MAGA, make Israel great again. But wait up, hold on. So that's why Laura Loomer is so relevant in this, because this doesn't make any sense. Laura Loomer is the Rosetta Stone, right? If she's for somebody, that means they're pro-Israel, pro-deep state, whatever you want to call it, right? If she's against someone, that means they're not for Israel. So she's on Alex Jones's side. And now Alex Jones is saying Dan Bongino is somehow part of the deep state targeting him and Flynn and Bannon. Look, none of it makes any sense. So it might just be that this is like territorial stuff and they're like, oh yeah, I'll come up with a conspiracy theory that's even more confusing than yours and makes even less sense. Or by the way, one of them is deep state and they're like, let's jumble things up so people have no idea who the bad guys are. And if we make it confusing enough, maybe people will simmer down or split into two different camps and lose their energy. So I don't know, but you've got a certain group there that's now telling you in league with Laura Loomer, don't worry about what the others are saying about, Israel first or anything like that. That's a very curious turn from Alex Jones, very curious.
When we come back from the break, we'll talk about how there are now more divisions within MAGA, with Congresswoman Lauren Boebert calling out Trump for vetoing something that is incredibly important for her district and 50,000 Americans who need clean drinking water. Come right back.
All right, let's go to members on TYT.com again. Rap said, I just ordered my Young Turks hoodie. My last Young Turks shirt, someone ripped up and threw in the trash at the laundromat. Haters gonna hate. Okay, I hear you, but I love that you're going back. And these days, there aren't as many haters unless you're doing your laundry at the deep state headquarters. No, I'm kidding. But seriously, you'd be surprised at what parts of the political spectrum appreciate that these days. And the reason for that is everybody knows we're not right wing. Right? Like that message has been delivered to everyone on planet Earth. We're good with that, right? But they respect us because of our honesty. And we, in our own way, we are fighting, as all of you are, for the betterment of the average American. And people have begun to respect that, and I love it. So you wear that, you wear those colors loud and proud anywhere you go. You can get it at shoptyt.com, of course. Don Dada Dragon with a message for Anna saying, Anna, speaking on your mortality, look at what you've been able to do with the time you've been on this earth. Most people in their hit their 40s and have a midlife crisis because they feel like they haven't done enough. But every day you and TYT make massive waves in the world. You spread awareness, you ask for people to do the easiest, hardest things ever, be truthful. You challenge yourself and others to do more than they did the day before, all while having a gorgeous smile. I'm younger than you by a decade. I served in the military and got to see the world. But my, oh my, do I hope when I grow up, I get to be half as dope as Anna. Thank you for who you are every single day.
You're amazing. I'm still going through a midlife crisis. Like I think everyone goes through it, to be honest with you, and that's okay. At least I didn't like buy a Ferrari or something, and I haven't done anything crazy. I'm just trying to keep it cool. Keep it cool.
We work at the Young Turks. Who's got money for a Ferrari? You crazy dog. Here's what we didn't get: $400 million in donor money. And maybe that's why we're the most honest show in America. Anyway, Ambidextrous Rex says, I'll happily join Republicans if in the don't pay taxes endeavor. Yeah, well, the government should start worrying about that because that's catching on a little bit there. This is YouTube members. Charles Geiker writes in, thanks Anna for mentioning the tribal thinking. That is my understanding today of our world, but I don't think of the tribes in this world, but how to be a better person. Also, Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Joshua Garcia says, good afternoon, TYT family. Hope everyone's having a wonderful New Year's Eve. I wish for prosperity and joy for you all and Anna and Jenks family and friends. From my family to yours, much love. Right back at you, Joshua. We appreciate you. Box writes in on Super Chat, guys, Russia and Israel get everything they want for Christmas. No breaks on that train. Can we focus on the midterms and who we should vote for and why? If we flub this, I have no words. Hashtag make Box not so conservative again. But then he writes in the next super chat and says, everything the government touches turns to poo. So Box, I hear you. Look, Rebellion Pack, vote for populist guys on the left, old school FDR style that actually represents the average guy. So we've got 6 candidates, more on the way, and the leader these days is Ro Khanna. Hurley writes in, I'm fairly confident that Mark Levin is macro dosing the same stuff I'm micro dosing. So you guys are on fire today, very, very funny. Ray of Sunshine ends with, how about a compromise and call Anna the saint of the salt? The saint of salt. I don't know that that's a compromise, but okay. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Also, Ektava, thank you for joining by hitting that big, beautiful join button underneath the video on YouTube. Young Turks members make this show possible, and we're not kidding. You're our donors, and $5 at a time, $10 at a time, and we appreciate you. Last thing, before we end the year here on our last show of 2025, I'm gonna have a guest on in the next hour, Jill Stein. Going independent as the last guest of TYT on 2025. We're gonna find out what she's up to. In a lot of ways, the queen of independence for a while, at least on the left and on the green side. All right, Anna.
This next story is super important because I think people are beginning to realize how little President Trump cares about our own country and our own people. And the people who are noticing it happen to matter the most because they're on the right. So let's get into it. Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert, who historically speaking has been a massive defender of President Donald Trump's, is now raging over Trump's veto of a water project bill that would help tens of thousands of Americans access clean drinking water. Many of them live in Boebert's district. Now, the veto was one of Trump's first in his second term, and we'll get into the details in just a second. But before we do, Cenk, I mean, how good does it feel to know that people are finally waking up to this whole charade, right? This idea that Trump wants to put America first.
Oh, it feels great. So there could be a couple of reasons why he's targeting Colorado in specific, but the most interesting one is political retribution for against Lauren Boebert. So why does he continually now attack his own side? We're going to explain here.
So last night, President Trump vetoed the Finish the Arkansas Valley Conduit Act, which aimed to basically complete a 130-mile pipeline that would bring fresh drinking water to rural communities in southeastern Colorado. So the fight to complete this pipeline has spanned literally, the story about this pipeline is literally insane, okay? It spans decades because here in America, we can't build anything, apparently. So the project initially received approval in 1962, okay? But construction was stalled for years because local government didn't have the resources to repay the costs of building this pipeline to the federal government. So the federal government is supposed to front the money, and then the local government is supposed to pay the federal government back. So according to the Colorado Public Radio, the original legislation required the state and communities that benefit from this project to fund 100% of the costs. And then Barack Obama and Congress decided, okay, we're going to provide 65% of the funding through the federal government. They made this decision back in 2009. So that means it leaves 35% to be covered through local funds, which would have been repaid to the government over a period of 50 years, meaning the federal government would front 35%, but that 35% has to be paid back by local government. And the local government agreed to that. They thought that was a great plan. Now, according to the new bill, which Lord Boebert co-sponsored with Democratic Senator John Hickenlooper and Michael Bennet, by the way, the bill will ensure the federal government makes good on its promise to southeastern Coloradans to deliver a safe and reliable water supply. We have invested over $550 million to build the Arkansas Valley Conduit over the past decade, and now we must ensure increased costs don't stop this project in its tracks. The Finish the AVC Act would remove interest payments on all non-federal cost share funds and extend the repayment period from 50 to 100 years. The bill helps make sure that underserved communities of southeastern Colorado can access clean drinking water and repay the federal government. The estimated cost of the project more than doubled from the 2019 estimate of $640 million to $1.3 billion due to increased inflation and labor costs. So I should note, this is very important, especially when you consider how divided our country is based on party identity. The bill passed both the House and the Senate unanimously. Everyone wants this project to move forward. Americans deserve clean drinking water, okay? Now, Trump decided to veto it anyway. And he says this, enough is enough. My administration is committed to preventing American taxpayers from funding expensive and unreliable policies, ending the massive cost of taxpayer handouts, and restoring fiscal sanity is vital to economic growth and the fiscal health of the nation. What about the health of those Coloradans in rural Colorado who need access to clean drinking water? How about their health? And you want to talk about fiscal responsibility when you just approved another $8 billion for Israel? A country committing atrocities, genocide, land theft. But not everyone sees it the way that Trump does. The Congressional Budget Office estimated that the bill would cost the federal government less than $500,000. So the US Bureau of Reclamation calls the conduit a major infrastructure project that upon completion will provide water to 39 communities and 50,000 people in Southeast Colorado. A Republican congressman, Jeff Hurd, was also a co-sponsor on the House version of the bill. And he clarified that the vetoed legislation did not authorize new construction spending or expand the federal government's original commitment. More than $200 million has already been invested alongside significant state and local contributions. Further delay risks stranding taxpayer dollars and leaving communities without a viable path to meeting drinking water standards. And Lauren Boebert is absolutely furious about it. She initially posted about it on X, saying like, this isn't over yet. But she also said in a subsequent statement that Trump decided to veto a completely non-controversial bipartisan bill that passed both the House and Senate unanimously. Why? Because nothing says America first like denying clean drinking water to 50,000 people in Southeast Colorado, many of whom enthusiastically voted for him in all 3 elections. Well, I mean, he doesn't have to worry about re-election again, so who cares, right? I mean, he obviously doesn't give a damn about their support and is totally fine with them not having access to clean drinking water. It's so disgusting and pathetic, Cenk.
Yeah. All right, so we're gonna get to the real reason in a second, and it probably has to do with Epstein. So that's a hell of a twist. But first, we started this project in 1962, and it's still not finished. The Chinese are laughing their ass off at us. Like, they get cities built in like, I don't want to exaggerate and say weeks, but months, right? They get amazing projects done over and over again. And so a lot of times the Republicans blame the Democrats. Oh, we can't get anything done because of your bureaucracy. Well, who just killed this project? Trump did. So now we're gonna have to wait, what, another decade, 2 decades, even though it was unanimous? By the way, like the unanimous part is both because it's logical and it has no opponents, but also it's a Republican district, it's a blue state, probably it'll be some union jobs, probably it'll go to a corporation to build it, etc. But it is actually necessary. Now, there are wildly different numbers here, even among the ones we just read you, right? Some say we've already spent 200 million, some say we've already spent 550 million. Okay, either way, we've already spent a tremendous amount of money, and I don't want that to go to waste, right? Some say, hey, it'll take 500,000 to finish for the federal government, and some say a hell of a lot more. But either way, there's literally only one person opposed to this in the entire US government, and that's Donald Trump. So why is he opposed to it? And that's where we go to the last part of Lauren Boebert's statement, graphic 8. She says, I sincerely hope this veto has nothing to do with the political retribution for calling out corruption and demanding accountability. Americans deserve leadership that puts people over politics. So what do you think, Anna? Is he spiting her because she was one of the 4 Republicans who voted to release the Epstein files initially?
Let me just be very clear that there's one thing that Trump does very well, and that's political retribution. Okay, he is a petty bitch. Like, that's who Trump is. And so he has no problem with 50,000 red-blooded Americans being denied access to clean drinking water, even though Congress unanimously supported this bill. Like, see, this is what I'm talking about. I loathe our government, not because I'm some anti-government, lunatic. I loathe our government because they don't care about our people at all. While Trump and his cronies are looting this country and sending our resources abroad to foreign wars, he's gonna go ahead and deny Americans clean drinking water because he's a petty bitch over the Epstein files and Lauren Boebert's support for being transparent with the American people and releasing the files. Ugh, he disgusts me. And any politician like him, I don't care what their party affiliation is. I'm sick of Americans being like neglected. I'm sick of these politicians who sign up to be public servants, but they're anything but. I mean, this guy is just pure scum, honestly. He just is. It's the truth.
So last 2 things on this. He also hates Colorado because Jared Polis, the governor there, he thinks, and by the way, the Republican Attorney General who actually did it, convicted Tina Peters of voter fraud, and she was on Trump's side in 2020. But she actually did do voter fraud. Republicans claim that voter fraud is the thing that they care most about. That's why a Republican Attorney General put her away. But now he's like, Jared Polis should rot in hell. And the idiot thought he could pardon Tina Peters, so he did. And then they had to tell him, Mr. President, it's not a federal case, it's a state case. You can't pardon her, plus you're a moron. And then finally though, Anna, so those are, he hates Colorado for actually doing something about voter fraud. He hates Lauren Boebert for actually doing something about Epstein files. And the press always paints it as Marjorie Taylor Greene or Boebert or MAGA like betraying Trump. No, Trump is betraying them, right? So that's crystal clear, and I wish they'd report it right. And finally, this just broke as we were doing the story, Anna. Trump announced a freeze of all child care funding to every state. No child care funding at all. But yesterday, we announced $8.6 billion to Israel.
Yep.
So sorry guys, your children are not important. Give us the money back. We got to send it to Israel. Plus we have to go to war in Venezuela, plus Iran, plus everything else. And because that's what the military industrial complex and Israel and all my donors want. And my donors didn't say anything about your children, so now they don't have any money.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's exactly right. And so you can understand why Trump's own base has turned on him, because this isn't the first example of Trump turning on his base. I mean, they really thought that this guy was serious about uncovering the rot of the deep state, of doing something about the corruption, even though he himself, in his first campaign, made it clear that he took advantage of and benefited from our system of corruption. Now, of course, he was on the side of bribing our politicians to the detriment of the American people. But why would anyone think that he would get elected into office and fix that or want to change that? No, this guy, I mean, and look at what he did in the first, I would say 3 months of his second term. He came in, he signed a ton, hundreds of executive orders, but the only thing he actually really cared about in terms of passing through legislation, which has staying power, was additional tax cuts for the rich. And in that same big, beautiful bill, right? What else was included? Additional cuts to public services that Americans, vulnerable Americans, needy Americans rely on. And all those executive orders that he signed, all of them have been getting challenged in the courts. Many of them, by the way, on the taxpayer's dime, of course. And now many of them are getting reversed. The latest is the ICE deployments, the National Guard deployments in various blue cities. He just announced today, because he lost in the federal courts, that he's going to bring those National Guard troops back and no longer deploy them in places like Chicago and Los Angeles. So he hasn't done anything for his base at all. And I think they're now very aware of that. And that's a good thing. I think it's important for people to be wide-eyed about the corruption and rot in our government.
Yep. And at this point, it's so interesting to see what's going to happen in the next 3 years, because the establishment is not going to give an inch. They're going to keep funneling tens of billions to Israel, tens of billions to the oil companies, hundreds of billions to the defense contractors, maybe even trillions to big pharma. And they're not going to negotiate drug prices. They're not going to do any of that. We told you from day one, and this is why I'm gratified to see that a lot of people across the political spectrum are beginning to trust our analysis now. What did we tell you is the only bill that Trump would pass? Tax cuts for the rich. What's the only one he passed? Tax cuts for the rich. Otherwise, it is a historically inactive Congress. It's the most do-nothing Congress in American history. Basically, only one major piece of legislation, and that was tax cuts for their own donors. The only thing they did otherwise is appropriate more money for the Pentagon and the pork that goes there. They didn't ask for them to pass any audits, and they loaded up Israel with more money.
Yeah, I mean, there are small things that are set to expire eventually, right? The no tax on tips up to a certain amount, and it will be, dependent on overall income of the tipped worker. But there's a lot of nickel and diming of ordinary Americans, whereas lots of big favors have already been done for the elite, the very people that Trump purported to want to fight back against, which no one should have believed. Anyway, that's my final statement for 2025. Sorry, it's not a positive or cheery one, but the show isn't over yet. Cenk, what do you have coming up for the next revolution?
Yeah, so Jill Stein's going to join us, and we're asking everybody, what do you think is the revolution and how do we get there? So I'm curious what she thinks. We've been the most open-minded show towards independence from day one, no matter which part of the spectrum they're in. So I love that she's joining us. And I'll end on a joke from Pessimistic Progressive. Deep State 2, even deeper. Sounds nice and dirty. Anyway, what do they call you today? Winter Angel or Saint of Salt and both? Happy New Year.
Thank you, Cenk. Happy New Year to you.
All right, back on TYT, the revolution. Prince Black One, thank you for joining through tyt.com/join. We're gonna try to make it worth it for you guys today. Among other things, I'm gonna do a bonus episode at the end of this, where just for the members on my recollections of New Year's past. I had two kinds of New Year's, one in Turkey and one in America when I was growing up. I'll tell you all about that. I don't think I've ever told you the second story, and it's a fun one, including regret from me about things I did do and didn't do. So that's for the members. Hit the join button below or tyt.com/join. But let's do the revolution. So joining me now is a special guest at the end of the year here, Jill Stein, godmother of the Green Party, in a lot of ways the independent movement, and has run for president several times. And I wanted to check back in with her because we're doing a story about a revolution or a show about it. Well, I want to know what she thinks and how we should do the revolution. And so, Jill, welcome back to the show.
Great to be with you, Cenk. Good to see you again. And yeah, we need a revolution.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
more than ever.
More than ever, for sure. So
and I'll just add real quick at the outset, I think it's more possible than ever. It's more necessary than ever. And it's really within our reach more than it's ever been.
I totally agree with you. And that's actually the main thing I want to talk to you about, why we think the revolution is so close at hand. We've both been looking forward to it, and I don't think that we've ever been really that optimistic about it until now. Speaking for myself, but I'll come back to that issue. And I know you have strong thoughts on Gaza. I want to come back to that issue. But first, let's start with a little bit of fun and / intrigue. So I hear that you have a folk rock musical past, and I also hear that you're a vicious assaulter of police. And I'm trying to figure out which one is true, or did you take like your non-acoustic guitar and smash it over a cop's head, or what happened with the so-called assault on the police?
Oh man, I think what happened is what happens at an awful lot of the Gaza protests and the campus demonstrations, which is that the police go on the attack. And I was standing in a circle, actually, of peaceful protesters who were basically chanting and respecting each other, a diverse group of Jews and Christians and Muslims being, just exemplary citizens standing up for democracy and our rights of free speech. And the cops were all around, and then they assaulted us. And there are great videos on the internet where I am being assaulted with a bicycle, being used as a battering ram, and they are attempting to push me back and flip me over onto my neck. And luckily, we were able to resist that. While that was going on, one of the cops bent over and picked up one of my feet to jerk me up and throw me back into a backflip. And it was definitely an assault, but the roles were reversed from what they claimed. Undoubtedly, this is part of the local police force that have been trained by the IDF, in these coalitions of Israeli trainers in so-called best practices for crowd control. And regrettably, this was not just the norm in Gaza protests, but is increasingly the norm in just police actions altogether. So there is a trial, which is still kind of, what can I say, on hold, hasn't quite happened yet, but these charges are still living, that I am accused of assaulting a police officer. I won't say more because it gets funnier the more you talk about it and the more the evidence is presented. It is more and more hysterical, but they're not kidding, they're not kidding. And there are thousands of people who've been arrested in Great Britain, charged with terrorism, for simply supporting the group Palestine Action. And we're living in such a crazy upside down world of our freedoms. Our freedoms are under attack from the same kind of policing that the people of Palestine are under attack from, and it's just another example of how the chickens come home to roost here. And it's really important that we stand up together and demand a democracy here at home and a democracy in our foreign policy, which should serve us everyday people in this country and around the world, and not serve the military-industrial complex and Palantir and the so-called security surveillance agencies.
Yeah. So look, there's two different issues here. So first, on the assault, are there real assaults on cops? Is that a real charge? Yes, I'm sure that happens. I've seen it happen. Are there assaults on cops during protests? In my experience, 99.9% of the time, cops assault the protesters, and it doesn't matter which side you're on politically. Cops will attack the protesters, and then if the protesters they don't even have to do anything. They're like, well, we had physical contact. Yeah, I know that's because you pushed me. I didn't do anything, right? And 99.9% of the time, in my experience, it's the cops who started it, and then they charge you with assault, partly to cover their ass, right? So, I mean, look at Dr. Jill Stein. You think she went to a protest and was like, oh, let me kick some cop ass, right? That's outrageous and ridiculous and silly. But there is a super serious part to it, other than the fact that they're actually bringing you to trial, which is, I mean, that's a sham trial in a democracy. It's just terrible. But outside of that, what you mentioned there, Palantir and others, and Larry Ellison from Oracle, have kind of bragged that Gaza was a testing ground, not in terms of the bombing, but in terms of the surveillance state. And then the surveillance state is then connected to the bombing because there's a program that Israel ran, for example, that was called Where's Daddy? And they would use AI to track people, and they weren't terrorists necessarily. AI was connecting phone lines and et cetera, and sometimes bombing seemingly random people, and they would wait for that person to go home so they could drop the bomb and kill their entire family with them, right? So I hope that is not headed in our direction, but I'm worried about the things that they're saying. So normally when they go after people protesting Israel, first thing they'll do is call them anti-Semites. A little harder with you, but wait for it. If it hasn't happened yet, it probably will. But tell us about why you're so concerned about what's happening in Gaza.
Well, I grew up just after the Holocaust in a Jewish community, in a Jewish household, attending religious school. Not for my regular education, but I was in religious school until I was so-called confirmed, which is what you do if you're a Reformed Jew. And this was like right after the Holocaust. I had neighbors in my Jewish community who had been in the death camps during the Holocaust. So as a child, I was extremely hyper aware of what genocide meant and that it must never happen again. And I grew up really taking that to heart. That's what made it possible for me as a child to move forward in the world. That we weren't going to live in, a constant ongoing state of terror and fear, that Holocaust and genocide would not happen again, not to anybody. And I took that very seriously, became a social activist, very much, I think, growing out of that experience. And then when the genocide began after, October 7th, and the breakout from the death camp, basically, I could not be quiet about it. And that was actually one of the reasons why I jumped into the race. There were other reasons as well, but that was a compelling one, that I just could not, in good conscience, allow this to happen without speaking out against it. And to me, it's not just the Palestinians, although their lives are absolutely front and center here, but really it's all of us. It's human rights, it's international law that are being torn to shreds right now. And if, the US is not going to be top dog forever. We are kind of in rapid decline here as an empire, kind of in its final throes at the moment. Economically, we've been superseded by the BRICS coalition, which is now running circles around the G7 or the G20, however you look at it. They got way more people, and they also have way more economic capacity, rising military capacity, which certainly is equivalent to ours. So we cannot rely on this foreign policy that we have been enacting since the Second World War of so-called full spectrum dominance. That's what they actually call it over at the Pentagon. The notion that the US will be top dog forever in all dimensions of life and the economy and resources, they all belong to us. It's like the Monroe Doctrine writ large. That's basically US policy. And we committed some 70 or 80 regime change operations in addition to really nonstop wars. You now have Donald Trump bombing, 7 countries over the course of the last year with massive bipartisan approval. So yeah, blame it on Trump, but right, the Democrats can't wait to vote with enormous enthusiasm and with a huge majority to give him every dime, in fact, more dimes and dollars and billions than he even asked for. So we have an extremely screwed up foreign policy, which is really part and parcel of this notion that we are the empire, bar none, and we will always be that way. We're not gonna, I mean, we are in rapid decline right now, economically, militarily, our stature as a member of self-respecting nations. So it's very, by destroying international law in Gaza, we're basically setting ourselves up to also be the victims of the next empire. If you think that's good for you, well, go ahead and keep sitting on the sidelines. But if you think that we too, as human beings, deserve justice and security, that all people do, it's very important that we all stand up and demand an end to the genocide, which means an end to the duopoly and the two parties that are bought and paid for by the Palantirs, by the security agencies, by the weapon manufacturers, by the big pharma and the health insurance industry. We have the best government money can buy, which is great for the CEOs and the corporations and the billionaires. But Americans are really on their last, hanging on with their last breath at the moment. Households are in unprecedented levels of debt, consumer debt, credit card debt, household debt, repossessions of automobiles are at all-time highs. People are struggling. Half of all Americans are struggling to keep a roof over their heads. This is not working, and this is the flip side of empire. The flip side of that budget, $1 trillion record budget for peacetime, more than ever in the past. More than that is being appropriated by both Democrats and Republicans, and it is not only failing madly as a foreign policy overseas, it's also failing madly as a domestic policy. 25 or so million Americans are about to see their health insurance premiums because Congress, in all of its wisdom, could not manage to protect the benefits of the ACA. We should be going way beyond the ACA. We would save, in fact, up to $1 trillion a year by moving to a Medicare for all system that provides healthcare as a human right for everyone. We could massively diminish the cost of housing by implementing rent control, which has been actually prohibited in most states around the country. Very difficult to pass because of the prohibitions against it, even though people want it. People want to end the genocide. In fact, it's twice as many Americans now who oppose Israel and the US genocide in Gaza as the numbers that approve it. More Americans now identify with Palestinians than Israelis. We can solve this, and it's really important. I guess my final, my concluding point here is that we need to stand up with the courage of our convictions, because in fact, we do have the numbers, we have the solutions, we represent the values. Do not be a slave to this intimidation, these threats, and the harm being inflicted on us by the duopoly. We can solve this if we stand up with the courage of our convictions.
Yep. So one quick point before I ask you the next question, which I think is actually really important and one that I wouldn't have imagined that I'd ask you. But look, I grew up in a town that was predominantly Jewish, and that culture was one of fighting for the underdog, challenging authority, and saying and meaning never again. So it's just wonderful to see Jewish Americans, so many Jewish Americans standing up and saying, yeah, we meant it. We meant never again. And so we're gonna fight on this ground. This is the most important ground there is. So I love that. Now, what's interesting, Dr. Stein, is that I very much notice a right-wing revolt happening, and I'm curious whether you notice it too. So it started with the Epstein files, it moved to Israel, but also, wait a minute, they wanted to actually reduce the Pentagon, which is not a position that I've ever seen from the right wing before, but they noticed that they never pass an audit. They can't account for $400 or $500 billion every year. And so they wanted I proposed cutting it by $100 billion, and tons of MAGA agreed. And then Trump wound up adding $150 billion to the Pentagon. And a lot of MAGA, his voters, were mad about it. And now they're even getting to Marjorie Taylor Greene going, wait, why are we doubling healthcare premiums? So Are you seeing the same thing I'm seeing here? And if you are, how encouraged are you by it?
Very much encouraged. And yes, absolutely, I'm seeing the same thing. And, the whole notion of America first is that we should be serving the American people, not putting Israel first, which in fact is what the foreign policy has been of both the Democrats and Republicans. And remember, many of those who voted for Donald Trump were basically Bernie Sanders voters who were really outraged at the way that he was manipulated and really shot down from the inside unfairly by the DNC and the leadership of the Democratic Party. So, in my view, it really shouldn't be a choice between Democrats or Republicans. It should be a choice between people-powered politics or corporate-powered, billionaire-captured politics. I think that's the best way to describe the duopoly. And I think there's enormous common ground with America Firsters, with even with MAGA. There are areas of difference, but a lot of that is the product of manipulation and propaganda. I think that sitting down and having dialogue and discussion is a great thing. I've experienced that myself, as a candidate, which you know well yourself. You have to go out and talk to people. And I was first tricked into running for office back in the year 2001, before many of you were born. And, at the time, we had the Tea Party movement, and we had allegedly opposing views on many things, including a woman's right to choose and so forth. And I found that when we actually sat down and had a chance to talk to each other, there was enormous common ground, and we didn't easily fit into these pigeonholes that were, trying to pit us against each other. So yes, I'm generally very encouraged by what polls are showing right now, which is that it's getting harder and harder to manipulate Americans. Not that it doesn't happen, but people are now very cynical about the media. And in fact, more Americans, polls show, now believe that the media is lying. That is big mainstream media, corporate media, more likely that they're lying to you than telling you the truth. By large numbers, people are screaming for an independent political choice. And if you look at the curves, I actually plotted this out because I couldn't find the graph. The numbers in the last Gallup poll were absolutely staggering, but they don't dare put it into a graph because it shows with much too great clarity what's going on. You can see the disapprovals for the Democratic Party going up like this. That's the disapprovals are going up over time, and the approvals are crashing and burning over time, so that it's now about twice as many disapprove of the Democratic Party as approve. And the numbers that identify as independent now exceeds the number who identify as Republican or Democrat. And the numbers who want an independent third party choice and say that the two mainstream parties are just doing a terrible job, those numbers are also at all-time highs. The numbers who say, oh no, don't worry, two parties is just fine, that has crashed and burned as well. So the setting has been laid out there for a real turnaround, and it's just a question of when. And as Malcolm X says, we're not outnumbered, we're just out-organized. So that is the issue of the day, and credit to real journalism, like on this channel, that dares to actually ask these questions and dares to actually inform viewers about the real choices that you do have.
Well, we appreciate that, Dr. Stein. So let me follow up on that. So, you could argue that no one has quite fought both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party as much as you have, and corporate media while you're at it. I might be in the competition, but you've got a good claim to that title. And so, and now we see both parties not just falling in approval, but what I want to get to is why, right? And you saw with the Democrats, once they realized that Biden and the entire Democratic leadership were lying to them about Biden's age and ability, there was kind of a great awakening there, like, oh, wait a minute, we might have been lied to our whole lives by these guys, right?
Yeah.
And so then on the Republican side now, the same thing is happening where they're like, wait, we said we were anti-war and Trump's bombing 7 countries. Some I've never even heard of. What are we doing here, right? And Trump said he wanted to release the Epstein files. Now he wants to bury the Epstein files, et cetera. And there's a great awakening happening there. And my thesis, and I'm curious what your take on it is that our real opponents was actually corporate media, because corporate media was the one diluting both sides with propaganda and setting them against one another. And now that online media is starting to be more powerful than establishment media, people are beginning to see, oh wait a minute, it turns out we're not that divided. It's actually us versus the people up top. That's why I keep saying, look up, right? The guy who crossed the border without $1 in his pocket isn't the problem. The guy to your left isn't a problem. The guy to your right isn't a problem. The problem is the people up top. So do you think that mainstream media has been the actual original patient zero of what's wrong with this country?
Yeah, very much. I mean, that's why the First Amendment is first. We need a free press that is willing to hold power to account, that's willing to tell the truth, that will inform and educate the public. And if you have media that is bought and paid for by the Larry Ellisons of the world, that's not what they're going to do. They will serve corporate power. And, I find it kind of funny and pathetic when people think that, we just have to listen to both Fox News and CNN, and then we'll figure out what's really going on. No, that's actually not the case. You'll get a double dose of misinformation and disinformation, and you won't get like real analysis. When we're talking about what are the prime movers here, that people are in a state of revolt now, it's not only that we don't have the media, but it's the conditions of our lives. It's the fact that people don't have health care, that 100 million Americans are carrying medical debt, that 2/3 of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, half of Americans can't afford their rent. I mean, people are in an utter state of panic right now, and they don't have time to follow the news, regrettably. So to me, the real driver here is the material conditions of our lives. But people deserve to have, real thoughtful analysis and news with integrity that's accessible and available. You really have to dig for it now. And most of what is invading our consciousness is, corporate propaganda, and the laws that used to protect Americans from propaganda were repealed by who? Obama. So everyday people are at real disadvantage for kind of understanding our world and being able to fight back. So that makes what you do at this station extremely important, and it makes the other outlets for real true reporting that are not corporate owned absolutely critical. And I couldn't agree with you more that the First Amendment, is first for good reasons. We've got to have that. I do think that, when we're mobilizing people, at least 1 out of every 3 voters doesn't bother to vote. And that's in just like the presidential poll, which is the most attended of any election. It's even worse going down from there. But so many people are staying home. It's not because the Green Party told them to. We didn't, we're there reflecting what it is that people want. It's because people don't get to hear that there are actually reasons for them to come out to vote. That's why the Democrats are very busy silencing their opponents. Butch Ware, for example, is a candidate for governor in a field in California, in a field that's really hurting for an anti-genocide voice, for a healthcare as a human right voice, for rent control voice. You have this candidate among a whole field of extremely lackluster candidates. It's going to be a jungle primary. There's a real potential for him to break through. That's Butch Ware running as a Green for governor in California, where there's going to be one primary, and it'll be a gazillion corporate Democrats, 1 or 2 unknown Republicans and one candidate who's actually standing up for what it is that people want. And I think that's really that's where the breakthrough is. And as part of that agenda, we're also calling for, liberating the media and ensuring the freedom of the press. If you talk like you do now, you're not only subject to all kinds of slings and arrows, but threats, and you'll be deplatformed. And, it's very hard. The press is up against a lot in trying to actually inform the American people about genocide, about what's going on in the DRC or in Sudan, or just with our own healthcare. In all the healthcare debate that they had in Congress, you didn't hear a peep really about Medicare for all and the fact that we would save $1 trillion a year, save it, not lose it. We would save it by standing up for a healthcare system that gets rid of that waste, red tape, and bureaucracy that is sucking 30% of our healthcare dollars away from healthcare.
Yep.
If we stand up on the things that we really need and that people are clamoring for, we do have the potential to break through on some of these key races. And I encourage people to check out Butch Ware and California governor's race.
Okay, so one last question for you, but again, before we get there, it would be amazing if, let's say it was a corporate Democrat versus Ware in the finals in the California governor's race, if there was a green-red alliance. But in the old days, you would have thought that's crazy. But these days, there's some chance that you could tell Republicans Jill Stein is here to help you, and they might actually believe you. And they might go, oh, okay, if she's for healthcare, and my healthcare, and not the healthcare of people in other countries or the healthcare of the executives at some corporation that donated to you, right? I don't know. Stranger things have happened, but I mean, things are moving in unpredictable directions. And to your point about media, one last thing, and then the question. I've told the story many times, but I don't think I've ever told it to you. In 2016, the last political event we did before the election was a town hall with you. And I got back from reporters in Washington, so corporate media, just when we thought you guys were being credible. You go and interview Jill Stein. I was like, wait, aren't people in news supposed to give everyone their options and not prejudge? So the whole idea that they're objective is hilarious, right? They literally want to limit your options, not expand your options. And kind of shoehorn you in. But anyway, the last question is related to all of the things that we've been discussing, which is, look, we're doing this show on the revolution. And so what do you think? So we're both ironically excited. A lot of people look at 2025 as a disaster and are depressed going into 26. But you and I seeing a convergence for the first time in our lives and an awakening for the first time in our lives in a lot of ways are excited. So how do we finish this? Obviously, when we say revolution, we always mean nonviolent, peaceful, political revolution. So what do you think actually gets the job done?
I think we have to fight peacefully on all battlefronts. And that means social movements and also challenging in the political arena. Power concedes nothing without a demand. You have to challenge power where it lives, in the halls of power, and we have to contest for power. And whether you win or not, whether you quote win the office or not, you win by engaging our democracy and rejecting the notion that censoring political dialogue is somehow going to magically come up with the solution when you're basically allowing corporations to rule the day. That's impossible. If you want to boil this down to something simple, it's acting with the courage of your convictions. Do not accept this dictum, this dictate from power that you are irrelevant, that you don't count, and that resistance is futile. They tell you that precisely because they are terrified that when we have the courage of our convictions, we have the numbers, we have the agenda, we have the solutions that people are clamoring for. So we can actually solve this if we take ourselves seriously and stand up and not take no for an answer. Our very lives depend on doing that.
All right, Dr. Jill Stein, leader of the Green Party for a long time, and also one of the leaders of the independent movement in this country for a very long time. We really appreciate your leadership and your foresight, and we appreciate you coming on. Also, Happy New Year.
Same to you, Cenk. Good to see you.
All right, wonderful to see you. All right, guys, so you see that? We end with a little bit of hope in 2026, or 2025 leading into 26. Hopefully we'll have a lot of hope by the end of 26. We hope. All right, guys, I'm gonna do a bonus episode for the members. Silly, fun New Year's Eve stories from when I was young, including things that were missed opportunities and inappropriate situations. Hit the join button below on YouTube or tyt.com/join, and let's have a little bit of fun to end the year.